Welcome and good evening. My name is Harper Carr, and we're here tonight to celebrate the release of my new teen plus novel, The Shadow Man. I'd like to start by acknowledging that I'm coming to you from the ancestral territory of the Coquitlam First Nation on the south coast of British Columbia in Canada. And I'd like to thank the Coquitlam people for continuing to care for these lands and waters where I live, work, and play. I'd also like to thank Indigenous people living on and around Vancouver Island because they are part of the inspiration for this story. I know we're all coming from different places tonight. If you would like to type your name and where you're viewing from in the chat, it will give me some idea of who's here. I wish I could see you all, but this isn't a Zoom meeting, so we'll need to communicate via the chat. Also, as some incentive, if you type your name and a comment in the chat over the course of the presentation, when we're done, I'm going to draw a winner for two things. First, an ebook. Second, to have your name in an upcoming novel if you wish. I did this in my last live launch for To Kill a King, and that winner's name appears in The Shadow Man. She might even be here tonight. I hope to hear from her. I've just started writing a new teen plus novel set in Ireland that spins off my urban fantasy series. So with your permission, your name could end up in that story. If you're uncomfortable with your name being used in a novel, you could also suggest a name, and that can be really fun. Naming is so important in fiction. Bear with me, I'm the Wizard of Oz back here tonight behind the curtain. So here we are. Here is The Shadow Man. My purpose tonight is to celebrate the launch of The Shadow Man and share some stories about how this book came to be. To begin, I'm going to offer a short reading and then share a slideshow. And after that, we'll have time for Q&A. This isn't really a spoiler because it's right there on the front cover of the book. Dark family secrets, a haunted lighthouse, a girl who sees the dead. Welcome to Pharaoh's Island. I'm going to read one of my favorite passages from a little further along in the story. This chapter is called Jimmy Mac, and little Jimmy is one of my favorite characters from all time. Thanks to my friend Ruby for helping me with his Newfoundland dialect, and I'm not going to try and read it in that dialect. So you're all saved from that. Here we go. Let me just take a drink of water. A thin, high-pitched voice blows in on the breeze and wrenches me from my reverie. Someone's singing an old Union Civil War song, but with a parodied chorus of Gory, Gory, Alleluia. My first semester, I took a course in the history of folk music and know the tune as John Brown's Body. Pete Seeger made it famous in the 1960s. I follow the song to the singer, a skinny, barefoot boy in short gray pants and a white sleeveless undershirt, 2 sizes too big, is sitting on the grass amongst the gravestones. For a moment, I freeze. What if he's another one of them? The ghost of an old man is one thing. The spirit of a child taken too young is something else. But I've met no spirits here so far. I couldn't even conjure them when I tried. I decide to give this little red-haired boy the benefit of the doubt. After all, there were kids aboard the ship. He's adorable. It seems like an odd song for a boy his age to be singing, though, and an even odder place to be singing it. But perhaps his parents are into folk music. There are plenty of old hippies like my aunt living off-grid on the islands. And kids love weird places like cemeteries. The boy has pulled his knobby knees up to his chest and rested sharp elbows on his thighs. His pale, freckled face is smooshed into his palms. With ginger hair trimmed short and exact around his ears, he looks comical, cartoonish. From a distance, he stares blankly. But when I approach, he pulls a funny face. I pull one back. Did you come on the boat? I gesture down the grassy path. The boy rolls his bottom lip into a pout and shakes his head up and down and then from side to side. My puppy's lost. I was looking for him. His accent's thick and more East Coast than West. My heart breaks for this boy and his puppy. Oh, I'm sorry. What's his name? I sit down beside him on the cement slab. Brownie. As he flashes his hazel eyes, a shiver runs up my arms. Brownie. My stomach clenches. Why is this strange little boy bringing up brownies? Yes, miss, brownies all brown, except for a white tip at the end of his tail. It turns up like this. He curls up his finger and sniggers. Poppy says they held him up to buy the tippy tail when they dipped him in the poo bucket. Oh, I release a breath. When he sticks the curled finger up his nose and digs around, I giggle, caught between disgust and glee. I guess he's about 6 years old, giving missing front teeth and harmless enough. My name's Gracelyn. What's yours? James Anthony McGuire. He pushes out his thin chest as if that should mean something. When I raise my eyebrows, his spindly ribcage expands even further. Poppy calls me Boyo, but Nan calls me Jimmy Mac. She sings a song with my name in it. The song dances through my brain. It's an old Motown tune, one of Hannah's favorites when she's into the wine and feels like dancing. I decide that maybe the puppy's name is just the puppy's name. And this is a weird coincidence. I clear my throat. How long has Brownie been missing? He shrugs his skinny shoulders. Fell out of the boat. I thought he swam to shore, but I can't find him nowheres. Where's your boat? Perhaps they're moored by the pier with the others. His face lights up. Want to play tag? Sure, why not? A little exercise might ease my anxiety. It might even stir up the puppy if he's still around. He jumps up and smacks my forearm. Use it! The second his small hand touches my bare skin, a chill ratchets up my arm and into my brain. Then he turns. The back of his skull is smashed in all along the right side, where blood clings to battered flesh and brain around a hole the size of my fist. You're dead, I stammer. It's the first time one of them has touched me. As I leap up, I lurch sideways and my toe catches the slab. My skirt rides up and I crash into a corner of the cement. Then before I can regain my balance, I tumble into the tall grass. Blood oozes from a gash in my calf and stains my beige skirt. Jimmy turns and cackles. Girls is dumb. He cocks his head like a crow and rolls his hazel eyes. Of course I's a ghosty. What do you expect to find in a boneyard? Oh, Jimmy Mac. Hey, okay, I'm going to stop for a second because I am seeing a whole lot of folks coming to me from the comments. So, hey, I'm going to say hi to some people here. Thanks, everybody, for coming tonight. And I see JP McLean from Denman Island and Kirsten, or should I say Kia from Maple Ridge. Corrine, can I tell them, Corrine? Corrine's name may or may not be in the book, okay? Krista, hi Krista, and Leslie Weberly, and Ming, and Donna from Oregon. Hey, Donna, and Jenny in Cincinnati. Yay. Nice to see you. And Ming is here. Ming is in Port Moody, and Trevor Atkins, and he says, Jimmy was fun. I thought you might like him, Trevor. He's really fun. And Krista says, cool. And Donna says, good to see you. Awesome. This is so great. I feel so much better having actual people talking to me now, sort of talking to me. But I can't get any further down the comments. Why can't I? Oh, here we go. Sue Kirby. Hi, Sue. Glad you're here too. All righty. Here we go. So let's get right into this then. Now I'm like really supercharged seeing everybody. Okay. So I thought I'd share some photos of how I came to write this story in these particular settings. So one thing about me is I always visit sites before writing so I could get specific details and feel the energy of the land. And I've done that Scotland, Ireland, the West Coast. Yeah, it's a thing. Oh, yeah. Okay, I'll stop there. Sometimes the opposite thing happens. I go to a place and then I realize I need to set a story here. And that is what happened in this case. So without further ado, I'm going to become the Wizard of Oz again here. All right. Ta-da! All right. So this story, The Shadow Man, is a young adult paranormal mystery, and I really had a lot of fun writing it. And the reason I'm celebrating tonight is this was 10 years of research and revision. The road to publication, and many of these people who are here tonight are writers, so they know how long this takes and how intense the whole process is. There's inspiration, there's research, there's revisioning. It just goes on and on. Some books happen quickly, some books do not. This one did not. During that time, I went through lots of changes, and so did the book. I changed my name and became Harper Carr. So there you go. That's a pretty big change. That's like my third or fourth name in this life this time around. The book wore at least 4 different titles: Ghostlight, Seven Secrets, Retribution, and finally The Shadow Man. It went through at least 3 major revisions, and I almost trashed it twice. So really, there's lots to celebrate here tonight. And I just mostly called it my lighthouse book whenever I was talking about it, because that made the most sense. So in the summers of 2010 and 2011, I went to visit my friend who's a lighthouse keeper north of Vancouver Island. Now, most people don't even know that you can be a lighthouse keeper, and I didn't know it either until my friend told me one day, I'm going to be a lighthouse keeper. And I said, yeah, right. Okay, sure. Anyway, 6 months later, she was a lighthouse keeper. So I went to visit her. I took my old golden retriever, Putty. We love Putty. We stayed a couple of weeks each summer. I learned a little bit about what light keepers do. And I thought, can I do this? Can I retire from classroom teaching, become a lighthouse keeper, and write books? Well, the more I experienced life on the Pacific Coast, the more I wanted to make that change. I mean, isn't it grand? I went home and I kept teaching high school. The next 2 years were rough, quite rough, and anybody who was teaching with me will remember that. My dog died. He was 12. My daughter was itching to get her own place, and teaching English in a portable was taking its toll. I'm sure there are teachers here tonight who totally get that. So I called my friend again and I said, hey, how do I become a lighthouse keeper? Meet Gracelyn Lassiter, a shy, introverted 17-year-old girl with a problem or two. She knows all about being a lighthouse keeper. Gracelyn grew up at Faro's Lighthouse, the child of lighthouse keepers. She led an idyllic life, messing around in the woods with her best friend, Caleb Moses, until her mother plunged from the cliffs at the lighthouse one morning. Her father had a breakdown, and they were forced to move to her hippie aunt's house on Cabrera Island. Here's another tip. Cabrera Island is based on Salt Spring Island, for any of you who know your Gulf Islands. I also spent a fair amount of time on Salt Spring with Putty, and some of you will recognize Dirty Dog Creek Trail, which isn't called that, but it is the off-leash dog haven on Salt Spring. At her aunt's house, Gracelyn tamped down her emotions and fast-tracked academics so she wouldn't have to think about leaving her home, her best friend, first crush, or answer the question, why? Why did my mother jump off a cliff and abandon me? And don't get me started on her cousin Serafina, who makes the mean girls seem nice. 4 years later, Gracelyn's father answers the question of why. She discovers him burning to death in his sailboat. She can't save him, but she does save her mother's silver Chinese box, a memory from childhood, and inside she finds his confession. I told everyone I saw your mother jump from the rocks into the sea that morning. That's a lie. Mercy didn't jump. I pushed her. I pushed her off the cliff. Mercy was having an affair. I didn't see his name, but it had to be Amos Moses. That man was always hanging around. What? Amos Moses? That can't be true. And now Gracelyn has another problem. The trauma triggers her ability to see spirits so real, she can't tell who's human and who's a ghost, except for the gray-veiled shadow man who starts haunting her. Please go back to Pharaoh's, go to the Spanish church and read your mother's journal. I beg you, my girl. The truth will save us both. Is the shadow man watching her? Is it really her father's ghost? If so, is he good or bad? And dare she go back to Pharaoh's lighthouse? But if I can see spirits, maybe I can see my mother again. And so it begins. Meanwhile, I took a course through my local power squadron and received my Marine Radio Operator Certificate. I studied and received my Pleasure Craft Operator Certificate just in case I got to drive a boat. I got my standard first aid certificate. I passed a physical with my GP. I applied to the Coast Guard, DFO, Department of Fisheries and Oceans. I got a reference from one of my friends who's a keeper. Thank you. I interviewed as a relief lighthouse keeper and I got the job. Then I applied for a 1-year teaching leave from the school district. And on July the 1st, I drove to Port Hardy with all my gear. That's at the far north tip of Vancouver Island. We did a boat switch at sea. My friend waved me off as I assumed her role as assistant keeper. That easy. This is a horizontal image of Vancouver Island. I really love this perspective. And I'll give you a minute to take this in. This is these are the stations where I worked. There are 27 manned lighthouse stations on the BC coast. I worked in several of them that year, and I used parts of several of them, as well as my experience, to create the fictional lighthouse. Whoops, back here, where the fictional lighthouses, where Pharos is. So you can see some of this, Scarlet Point, Cape Scott, Addenbrooke, where Chatham Point, Entrance Island, which is pretty much Nanaimo, Leonard Island, which is Tofino, and Nootka. Okay. Here we go. When my friend returned, I flew over to Cape Scott with all my gear. By the way, the helicopter rides are the absolute best part of being a lighthouse keeper, okay? I can't even describe it. If you've been in a helicopter, you know, but it's just, you feel like a dragonfly. You really do. It's just an incredible feeling. Some of you might have been to Cape Scott. I had all my gear with me. It's a beautiful part of the world up there. And I stayed there for a couple of weeks, I think, maybe more even. There was an old bear, a big old bear around hanging outside. I named Leroy, and I had to walk down a long road through the woods to damp my compost pile. And I looked at the other keeper and I said, "You want me to walk through the woods carrying a food bucket?" He's the boss, right? So I'm like, He said, "Take the tractor," he said. And then he taught me how to drive it. So here I got to learn how to drive the John Deere, and you can see how much gear I have, including my guitar, food for 3 weeks, computers, clothes, sleeping bags, like you name it. It's like clamping, kind of, in a weird way. From Cape Scott, I flew 60 minutes north to Addenbrooke Island, where there were humpback whales circling the island all day. From there, I flew back to Port Hardy and drove to another station. I had a fall there and hurt myself quite badly and had to drive home to recover for several weeks. Those of you who know me well know that I'm something of a klutz, and I can admit to that. And I hurt myself several times over the course of that year. And I finally decided I should probably get back behind my desk before something really serious happens. FYI, Gracelyn is also a klutz in the novel. So that's a little bit of, me in there. Pretty much all the time she hurts herself, that's me. My first assignment when I came back was on Entrance Island. You might have seen it if you've taken the ferry into Nanaimo. I stayed in the big house there, and it's really amazing. I'll get back to your comments in a second. Entrance has the most amazing marine mammals. They're just gorgeous. And skies. Honestly, I have never seen skies on the West Coast anywhere like I saw at Entrance Island. Is anybody from Gabriola over there, or do you know what I'm talking about? It's really incredible. I'd like to just say, Ming's telling me, oops, I fell sick in a helicopter. Lighthouse keeping's not for me. And a daring klutz gets up and tries again. Thank you. True enough, I am a bit of a daring klutz. I did persevere with all my, and I have lots of scars to prove it. Okay, so where are we here? I spent December on Leonard Island near Tofino. One of the duties of a lighthouse keeper is looking after the grounds. Again, I'm not the best person to give any kind of sharp instruments to. Anyway, here I'm clipping back ivy. I also did weed whacking a little bit when they'd let me. Painting all that shiny red trim you see all over the place. Weeding, gardening, along with marine weather reports. And this is the aerial view of Leonard Island near Tofino. There are always two keepers, and they split shifts. So this one, I believe this one had 3 houses. I think they had 2 houses and a crew house. But I was always given the morning shift, so I started at 4 a.m. with the first weather report. You do the weathers, that lightkeeper talk, every 3 hours. And by the way, Gracelyn explains all of this in the book. She does a really good job of it. So if you really are interested in what happens at a light station, there's lots of that in there. This was my house. In the spring, I went to Nootka for 2 months and I fell in love with the land. You can see how my house was kind of perched up on stilts, on rocks at the edge of the ocean. This is Nuu-chah-nulth territory. Nootka Lighthouse is adjacent to Yuquot, which is an ancestral village and a National Historic Site. Mostly because Captain Cook got lost and ended up there in 1788 and mistakenly called the people Nootka. This is really how that all came about. I'm just looking to see if there's any other comments here. Okay. Right. Okay, back to Nootka. Spain and England fought over the land because of the sea otter fur trade, ignoring the fact that Yuquot was the summer village of the Muchalot people who've lived there since time out of mind. If you're intrigued by the history, I wrote a blog while I was there called Life on the BC Lights at blogspot.com, and I researched a lot of the history and I wrote a lot about it. So you'll be able to hear more about that there. If you read the book, and I hope you do, you're going to notice references to a few things because there's a lot of me and my experiences in the story. A treacherous trolley that must be navigated daily to get to the Stevenson screen. I did not hurt myself on the trolley, but I really could have. Gracelyn explains this very well in the book, but the screen is an enclosure to house instruments necessary for making daily aviation reports. Okay. Not all stations have a Stevenson screen, so I had to learn how to read the instruments and do calculations for the aviation reports. Those of you who know me probably know that math is not my specialty, but I was able to follow directions and I don't think anyone got hurt. I didn't hear about it anyway. And of course, there were dogs to take me on walks. The big guy had a name that meant something like the brother that was less brave and lived. Apparently his brother took risks and something bad happened there. And little Lucy here with the white fur, she was like amazing. Her mother had gone to the city and she moved in with me. She basically just stayed in my house and she went everywhere with me on all my walks and was really great. Because when you're living by yourself all the time for a long period of time, it's tough. So having a dog there is really, really, really nice, especially when you're a dog person like I am. Okay. The Utrecht 3 stops at Nootka twice a week in the summer months. You can book passage for the Friendly Cove day cruise and board it at Gold River. So the URL for that is getwest.ca, and honestly, it's really amazing. In 2018, when I was writing the novel, my daughter and I took the cruise from Gold River, and some of that excursion features in the book through Graceland. This is a great way to feel the landscape of the Northwest Pacific coast, and I highly recommend it. The ship stops at Nootka for about 2 hours, but they have other routes and other cruises as well that look really wonderful. Actually, that's how I this is one of the reasons we ended up moving to Gold River. For those of you who know me and know that I moved from Yarrow to Gold River, we went on that cruise and we were sitting on the dock at Krabby Bob's eating this big seafood platter, and it was so good. And I looked around and I said, you know, we should move here. And what can I say? Things happen like that. My writing tends to get into my life. They're connected. Jenny says, are there any jobs you haven't done? Or is she talking to Donna? Anyway, the wheelhouse boasts a huge brass trimmed wooden steering wheel and an antique marine telegraph. It's gorgeous. And yes, the captain there let me steer the ship. And I didn't even hit anybody, I don't think. I didn't break the boat anyway. It's still going. So this is the White Church at Yuquot. It's the third Catholic church that was built there since the late 1700s. Emily Carr actually painted one of them in around 1923. The Moatchat-Muchlot First Nation have reclaimed and restored this church with beautiful art and carvings. And I'm very grateful to the Indigenous people who maintain Yuquot and encourage visitors. So you can go up there and visit. You can camp. They have cabins on the lake up there. It's really gorgeous. It's a National Historic Site. Their website is mmfn.ca. That's Moatchat-Muchlot First Nation.ca. Some of you may know this book. It's an old book called White Slaves of Maquina, John R. Jewett's narrative of capture and confinement at Nootka. According to Jewett, who was a blacksmith, in 1803, while the Boston was anchored in Nootka Sound, Captain Salter had a disagreement with Maquina that resulted in 25 of the crewmen, including the captain, being killed and beheaded. After lining up the hoods, Jewett says he was asked to identify them. It's a sensational tale printed in 1815 at a time when these kind of stories drew a lot of attention. I can't testify to the truth of it, but I did read this book while I was there, and it definitely had an effect on me. Do note, for you guys who are writers and editors and publishers, there's a 10-year lag. Well, I just did a book, took 10 years. But anyway, there's a 10-year lag between Jewett's release and the first publication of the book. So I'm sure the editor and publisher had a field day putting it together, and that had a lot to do with how it eventually turned out. Jewett spent over 2 years living at Yuquot, and though he claims he was a slave, he was adopted into McQuinn's family and given away. So I don't know. I don't know. You have to take all of these things with a grain of salt. But I will get back to that history in a minute. This is the fantastic aerial shot from the Muchlat Moachot website you can find under water taxi bookings. That, by the way, water taxi bookings is another way to get there. If you don't want to take the ferry, they'll actually take you out there. You can see why they chose it as their summer space and why the Coast Guard chose it as a light station. There is also a fantastic hiking trail that runs along the coast called the Nootka Trail. And a lot of people were coming and going while I was there. They would get dropped off either up the coast by the water taxi or by the boat, and they come and go like that. Sorry, I need a drink. Do I have photos in the book? Kathy, no, I do not have photos in the book. It's a chapter book, so no, I don't. But I do have a lot of photos on my old Life on the BC Lights blog. And okay, just hang on, I need a break. Okay, the graveyard. Yes, there is a graveyard at Nootka. It was one of my favorite places to visit. You can't really write a ghost story without a graveyard. You can't. It just feels spooky. It felt spooky the whole time I was there. The graveyard felt really spooky. I went up there all the time. I just loved it up there. And as I mentioned, I did a lot of historical research while I was there. Many people died there over millennia. Indigenous people for sure, but also because this part of the world is the graveyard of the Pacific, and there have been boating accidents, sinking ships. So, in fact, one night, I just read Jewett's account and written a couple of pieces for the blog when my bed started to shift back and forth across the room. I had gone to bed early, 7:30, because I was getting up for 4 a.m. And my immediate reaction was to grab the sides of the bed and hold on. And when it stopped moving, I got out of bed and I looked at it and I said, okay, stop it. I was absolutely convinced the ghost I'd been writing about were messing with me. That's how spooky it was there. They just got into you. And then I heard a voice from the radio in the next room say, yeah, we just had an earthquake here. Did y'all feel that? And it was right there. So as you saw, the lighthouse light station that I worked at was perched on rocks at the edge of the ocean. And that little arrow by the red thing, yeah, that's where I was. And the circles, of course, were where the earthquake hit. It was a 6.7 earthquake. And yes, we did feel it. It also brought up for me the idea of haunted lighthouses. It was really scary. And I think it was probably, at least subconsciously, another reason I decided to go home to my desk, because it was so close. It was so close. And I could really feel the presence of the spirits. So that was one of the inspirations to include ghosts in the story and make Gracelyn a medium. So mediumship. Now, the book contains ghosts, and some are spooky, including little Jimmy Mack. Gracelyn sees them so well, as I said, she can't tell the difference between a human and a spirit unless they show her their injuries. I've seen and felt the presence of spirits myself over the years, but I didn't know about being a medium. I started out by reading books written by mediums, and then I saw an ad for a mediumship class at Reflections, which is my local metaphysical store. By that time, I'd left the light stations and I was back teaching in the Lower Mainland. A large group of us showed up that first night and we started reading for each other right away. I met Yasmin and Nailu in that class, and Mary. Yasmin drew all the tattoos for my Holy Stone covers, and the four of us ended up studying mediumship and psychic development with Metajoy for over a year. So that's how Gracelyn learned how to manage her gift. And a lot of that sort of, that is in the book too, that like, how do I deal with this? Because she's constantly trying to figure out how to make things better. This is the URL for the old blog I kept while I was at the light. So you can actually go back and follow my journey there. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. So I'm just going to ask, does anyone have any questions? Joanne says that graveyard gives me the shivers. It was a shivery kind of graveyard. Yeah, it definitely was. And it was old, like the graves were old and a lot of them were covered over. Yeah. Thanks, Krista. Let me see if I can do this. Oh, there. Amazing and so interesting. Us gorgeous photos of stunning scenery. Would you do it again? You know what? When I was in Campbell River, the last year I was in Campbell River, I was so close to being able to just go to a lighthouse, because it was when I was living in the Lower Mainland, and I had to take everything in my car and either drive to Victoria or take the ferry over and drive to Port Hardy. And then when I was in Campbell River, I'm like, geez, I'm really close. I could just go and, start doing some lighthouse keeping again. But yeah, I didn't. And also we had, well, I have a deal breaker now. I have a grandson. So that kind of makes it, different. Were there dates? Were there dates on the gravestones? Some of them I saw were from the 20s, 1920s, but there were definitely older ones than that around. So remember, there were 3 churches there, right? And I think the original graves were around the first church, which was near the beach. And then there's that church. And the graveyards aren't around that church. The graveyards are way up the trail from the church. So I think that, I don't know, I feel like maybe they were from the 20s and the original graves from way, way, way back are maybe not even visible. They might be under the ground, but not visible. Okay. Can see how this experience is, but well, yeah, thank you. Yeah. Some things just really, really stick with you, right? And you have to do it. That's a good question. I think probably yes. Yeah. I know, like, definitely some of the experiences that that Gracelyn has, I have had, especially the times. Corinne, I know I sent you the book. Have you read it? Did you get through it yet? I don't want to say too much if you haven't, but some of the experiences that she has when she's lying in bed and she wakes up and she sees somebody standing at the foot of her bed, that has happened to me a few times. And I've actually seen a body there. So I would say, you didn't get the book? Oh, I'm going to have to fix that. I've had that happen a few times. And also when I was living in Ontario, I frequently, when I was living by myself and my ex was away for long periods of time on the road, I constantly would wake up thinking there's somebody standing here, and I would reach over and flip on the light, and then there would be nobody there, but I knew somebody was there. And so those kinds of experiences for sure, I've had. And so those spirits helped me write the book for sure. Here's a good question. Isn't it lonely? Well, it depends what your it depends what your personality is. I did not find it lonely at all. No, I did not find it lonely. I think if you're a person who is used to living with people, it might be lonely, but I am very comfortable living by myself, so I'm not worried about that at all. Also, there's there's sat TV, there's internet. At Nootka, for sure, there was people coming and going a lot of the time. There were some places that, yes, there was just the two of us, and that was, a little bit nerve-wracking, but no, it wasn't lonely. Other questions? Tell us about the cover design. Well, that's a big question, Joanne. So the cover, I designed the cover. And I think I was looking for something really specific that would sort of show Gracelyn as she is. And she's not a, she's not a model-like kind of a teenager like her horrible, horrible cousin. She's a real normal kind of girl with shaggy hair, and she's just, yeah, she's really working on this problem of what happened to my family. And this story, really, I could say the theme of this story is about love and belonging and finding home. It's really about going home and how to bring the sort of fractured pieces of her life back together, because her life has been really fractured, and she's been bullied and teased, and a lot of horrible things have happened to her, apart from her mother jumping off a cliff and committing suicide, and then her father admitting to perhaps murdering her mother. So, these are big things. So I was looking for something that was fairly simple, but I also wanted a really, really nice font. Here, I'll just, I really love this font, and I wanted something that had the idea of depth to it, that a little bit spooky, a little bit like she's actually sitting on water, like floating on water here, but you can't really tell, but she is. And sort of looking off into the sun, which is a white ball. So that is where that happened. And I put that one together. Okay. Donna. Do the other ghosts appear as they are, and only the shadow man appears as a shadow? The ghosts are all doing different things. The ghosts seem to have this power to appear as ever they want to. So they can show themselves when they were normal looking people, and they can also show themselves with all their gruesomeness and their injuries, and they do it, I don't know, maybe they're messing with her, I don't know, but they do it to yeah, they have power, they can do that. So yeah. He appears as a shadow in the beginning, but he becomes more and more like she can sort of tell what's going on, and that she can see him in different ways. So he appears several times over the course of the book, and it's just interesting how she sees him and how he appears to her. Because he's really, really trying to convince her to go there. He wants her to go there. He wants her to go through this process, and there's a reason for it, which I'm not going to tell. And yeah, so I'm not going to tell the ending, and you have to read it. And yeah, let me just see. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you. Thank you, Krista. Nice comments about my cover. Do you have plans for another book in the Shadowman world? I do not. I do not. Yeah, I just don't. This one, I don't know, 10 years working on that one book was a lot. And so I'm just kind of glad that it's done, that it's out there in the world as of today. I'm just checking. I love all these comments. Thank you, everyone. This is so helpful, and it makes me feel that I'm not alone. Because when you're doing something like this, rather than a Zoom meeting, it's like you and, you know, space. I think I've got all the comments. You have to have a dog. Indeed. Indeed, I do have to have a dog. 4 a.m. yikes. Yeah. The lighthouse keeping times. So it's interesting that the two shifts that are going on, some keepers will rotate shifts so that you don't always end up on mornings or on evenings. But both of the places that I stayed long amounts of time, Tofino and Nootka, both of the keepers I was with, the principal keepers there, were the bosses. They were both night owls. And honestly, at Nootka, the keeper there was often going to bed when I got up at 4 a.m. And so I did not see him at all, really. I had his dog, and that was great, but I didn't see him hardly ever. And he was really great, though. He taught me everything, and then he kind of went about his life, and he was a great guy. I was going to say about Nootka as well. It was really nice there. If I was ever going to go and be a lighthouse keeper, I would want to be there. It just had so much going for it, and it's just such a beautiful, beautiful place. So let's see. I look forward to reading it. I remember when you were on Salt Spring doing research. Yes, I was. And I bet you know the name of that park, which I can't remember right now. That is the off-leash dog park, and it's really good. And I describe it. It's a really great place to go with your dog. I set a scene there. And cheers for having it out in the world. And cheers to all of you who came to support me tonight. I really, really appreciate having such a great supportive community. Writers, we do a lot of things alone, and it's really nice to have people with you. So I just want to thank you all. Thank you. And yeah, I hope you do enjoy the book, and you let me know how you thought of it. So Duck Creek, thank you, Duck Creek. That is the place on Salt Spring. All right. Okay, well, I've been talking for 50 minutes. If any more pressing questions, I'm going to end with this one. Oops, here. All the best, Harper. I hope this book hits the charts. I hope so too. Thank you, Joanne. And thank you all so much for coming tonight. Blessings. It's great. Will I be at Worlds Collide? I don't think so. But we shall see. You're welcome, Trevor, for the background and all the pictures. And I will see you all anon, because I bump into you all regularly. Thank you. Cheers.